Hi, in this video I would like to show you the origins and the history of the name Palestine. This is important because many of today's so-called Palestinians claim to be descendants of the ancient Philistines who invaded Israel in biblical time. They most likely assume that if they shouted in the streets day in and day out in order to claim ownership of the land of Israel, it would become true. But the truth is that there is absolutely no connection between them and the ancient Philistines. The current so-called Palestinians came to Israel by land from different countries in the Middle East, and the list of countries can be found in my Facebook page, Anti-Semitism for Dummies. From the map on the left side of the slide, you can see that the Philistines originated in Greece. Sometimes during the late Bronze Age, there was a mysterious migration of people from Greece to different destinations around the Mediterranean. The ones settled along the shores of Israel clashed with the local Israelites, and you might be familiar with biblical stories associated with such events. But just as their appearance was shrouded in mystery, so was their disappearance after only a few centuries. Today we know from archaeology that they maintained their Greek architecture and diet, and that many of them were pig farmers, which was not suitable for the hot climate of this side of the Mediterranean. The name Philistine was translated from the biblical Hebrew name Plishtim, which means invaders. Without a group identity of their own, the local Israelites referred to them as invaders, which eventually became their name. So how did Israel become Palestine? It came from the Romans. The Romans called Israel, the Israel area, Syria Palestina, when they conquered this area in the year 63 before the Common Era. The reason the Romans chose this name was in order to humiliate the stubborn Israelites who would not leave their religion in order to convert to the Roman culture and religion. Once the Romans left, the name Syria Palestina was never used again until 1,500 years later, when the British conquered Israel in 1916. We don't know why the British chose this name, since Israel was called different names by different conquerors between the Romans and the British. But we do know that altogether, out of about 3,500 years of consistent Israel existence, with Jewish group identity in it, only for a combined total of less than 500 years, Israel was referred to as Palestine. By simple math, this leaves 3,000 years of Israel's consistent existence in which it was not called Palestine. But this is not what the so-called Palestinians want you to know. If not from the Bible, we know from the Merneptah stone, dating 1205 BCE, that there was a nation named Israel in biblical time, and we know that it remains Israel's name from the vast Jewish literature that was consistent since then. For the Jews, inside and outside Israel, Israel was always Israel, without a break in maintaining its group identity, regardless of the different conquerors. Notice from the map on the right side of the slide that the British mandate for Palestine was not only Israel, but also included what today is the Kingdom of Jordan. This is also not what the so-called Palestinians want you to know. Only recently, in 1946, the British transferred the power over what was called the other side of the Jordan River to the family from Saudi Arabia, the Hashemite, which became the royal family of Jordan. Soon after, the British transferred the power over Israel to Israel. As you can see, the current association of the name Palestine with the ancient Philistines and only with the Israel side of the Jordan River is grossly inaccurate and nefariously misleading. If the Israel haters referred to the British mandate for Palestine in good faith, they would have included Jordan in their search for a country of their own. But since they refer only to Israel as Palestine and wrongfully claim consistency of the name Palestine since the Philistines, they simply reveal their hateful jihadist intent to rid Israel from its native Jews. I have heard many times that it wasn't up to the British to give Israel to Israel. But I have not heard at all that it was not up to the British to give the other side of the Jordan River to the Saudi Hashemite family. On the same token, I have seen non-stop demonstrations to free Israel from the Jews, who have a credible, consistent group identity in Israel since biblical times. In this slide, there are different items with a common denominator. They are all from the British Mandate for Palestine that was between 1916 and 1948. You can see here official currency notes and coins. You can see here stamps and the official British Mandate newspaper issued by the British Mandate government. You can also see in this slide the flag and the map of the Israeli side during the British Mandate for Palestine. There were no such items whatsoever for the other side of the Jordan River or for the people who today call themselves Palestinians. The common denominator here is the abbreviation of the words Eretz Israel, land of Israel in Hebrew, one of which I circled in red on the newspaper. This abbreviation appears on each item here, other than the flag, also appears on other official documents such as passports, birth, marriage, and death certificates, contracts, public school documents, etc. You cannot find the same group identity on any document of the so-called Palestinians who wrongfully claim ownership of the land of Israel. There never was a group identity called Palestinians or Palestine, and there never was a history for this fictional group of people who migrated to Israel by land from different countries in the Middle East when the Jews started to develop it. What I would like to leave you with is the urgency to question the fictional information that the so-called Palestinians shout in the streets day in and day out. Shouting it relentlessly doesn't make it true. If you didn't know, now you know. Bye.